Come on, Elijah, stay with me. Don't you give up on me now, please.
She didn't even know if she'd live through the night or if her baby would. Rain slammed against the windshield as Dr. Grace Monroe pressed her trembling hand on a stranger's chest, a stranger whose pulse was fading fast. "Stay with me," she cried, her voice breaking between contractions. But when his eyes flickered open for just a second, she froze. That face, those eyes, it couldn't be him. Because 6 months ago, he was the man she swore she'd never see again. The man who changed everything. The man who left her with a secret growing inside her. Now, destiny had dragged them both back to the same crossroads, one fighting for life, the other bringing life into the world. And as the sirens wailed in the distance, Grace whispered, "Please, don't die on me," is greater than. And that's where her story truly began. Before we dive deeper, please, if you're listening to this right now, I want to prove my mom wrong. She said I can't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter. Subscribe to King's Folklore, and let's keep breathing life into tales that refuse to die. Now let's continue. The ballroom glittered like a sky of falling stars, chandeliers swaying above champagne laughter, silk gowns sweeping across marble floors. Grace Monroe stood near the back, hands folded, her posture neat and professional, though she wasn't there to celebrate. She was working temporarily, assisting as a volunteer medic for the Carter Foundation gala. Her license had been suspended months ago, a tragic misdiagnosis that wasn't entirely her fault, but enough to stain her record. Bills were piling up. Her mother's health was failing. And tonight, she was here to smile, nod, and hand out charity envelopes, pretending everything was fine. Then he walked in. Elijah Carter, billionaire heir to the Carter medical empire. Broad-shouldered, quiet, effortlessly confident, the kind of man whose presence turned heads without trying. Grace had only seen him in magazines before, surrounded by CEOs and dignitaries, but in person, he didn't look untouchable. He looked tired, human. Their eyes met across the room. Just a glance, but it felt like gravity had shifted. "Dr. Monroe, are you all right?" her friend whispered beside her. Grace blinked, realizing she'd been staring. "I'm fine," she lied, adjusting her badge. "Just thinking." Hours later, after the speeches and toasts, the crowd thinned. Grace found herself outside on the balcony, breathing in the cool night air. The city lights stretched endlessly below, beautiful and cruel at the same time. She didn't notice Elijah step beside her until he spoke. "Funny thing about nights like this," he said softly. "Everyone looks like they're celebrating, but most are just pretending." Grace smiled faintly. Maybe pretending is easier than explaining. He turned to her then, curious. "And what are you pretending to be tonight, Dr. Monroe?" The way he said her name made her heart trip. "Someone who still believes in second chances," she said quietly. Something in Elijah's expression shifted, the kind of pain you recognize only when you've lived it too. They talked for nearly an hour. About medicine, about failure, about faith, about what it means to lose everything you built and still wake up the next day. It wasn't flirting. It was something deeper, two broken people finding warmth in a cold night. Later, when the rain began to fall, they ran for cover. The laughter came first, easy, unexpected, and then silence. And in that silence, something unspoken passed between them. One look, one heartbeat, one decision neither could explain. That night, they crossed a line neither planned to. No promises, no names exchanged beyond what they already knew. Just comfort, human and flawed, in a world that had given them nothing but pain. When dawn broke, Grace left before he woke. She couldn't bear to see his face in the sunlight. It wasn't shame. It was fear. Fear of feeling something she couldn't afford to feel. 2 weeks later, her world shifted again. A late period, a trembling hand, 2 pink lines. She sat on the bathroom floor, clutching the test like it might explode. No, this can't be happening," she whispered. But it was. The man she'd met once, the man she'd never see again, had left her with a heartbeat growing inside her. Grace decided to keep the baby. Not out of hope, but out of love. She'd lost everything, her license, her pride, her peace, but she wouldn't lose this child. She moved into a smaller apartment, took shifts at a community clinic, and prayed every night that the universe wouldn't take this last piece of joy away from her. Still, there were nights she dreamt of Elijah not as a billionaire, but as the man who listened, the man who looked at her like she wasn't invisible. She never thought she'd see him again. Until the night she heard the crash. It was raining again, the same kind of rain that started it all. Grace was on her way to the hospital for an overnight shift when a car spun out on the slick road, slamming into a lamppost. Her instincts took over. She pulled over, grabbed her emergency bag, and ran. The driver's face was hidden under the shattered glass and blood. Grace forced open the door, hands steady despite the panic in her chest. "Sir, can you hear me?" she shouted. Then the lightning flashed. She saw his face. Elijah. Her knees went weak. For a second, the world tilted her past, her present, her unborn child all colliding in a single heartbeat. Another contraction hit her, sharp and sudden. She clutched her belly, gasping through the pain, then looked back at Elijah. Unconscious, but alive. "Not now," she whispered to herself. "Please, not now." But she refused to leave him. With every ounce of strength, she kept pressure on his wound, called for help, and fought the pain tearing through her body. 2 lives on the line, 1 heartbeat fading, another beginning. By the time the ambulance arrived, Grace was pale, shaking, and barely conscious. The paramedics lifted Elijah first, then her. She stared at him as they both disappeared into the same ambulance, their fates now tangled tighter than ever before. Is greater than. And that's how 2 broken souls met again. One fighting for life, the other bringing life into the world. The world smelled like antiseptic and rain when Grace woke up. White ceiling. Beeping monitors. A faint ache beneath her ribs. For a moment, she couldn't tell if the night before had been a nightmare or something worse. Then she heard the nurse whisper outside her curtain. "The man she saved, Elijah Carter. They say he might not make it." Grace's chest tightened. It really was him. She turned her head slowly, eyes catching the reflection of a figure across the hall. Elijah, motionless on a hospital bed, face wrapped in gauze, machines breathing for him. Her pulse skipped. Memories flooded back the balcony, the laughter, that one night she told herself to forget. Now here he was, fighting for his life. And she was fighting to bring another into the world. Hours passed before she could stand. Despite the nurse's protests, Grace pulled herself up, one hand on her stomach, and walked toward his ward. She stopped at the door. Through the glass, she saw him pale, fragile, nothing like the billionaire the world admired. And for a second she forgot everything, the secrets, the pain, the what-ifs. "Ma'am?" a nurse asked softly. "Do you know Mr. Carter?" Grace hesitated. The truth sat heavy on her tongue. "No," she whispered. "I just wanted to check on my patient." By morning, the news had already spread across the city. Unknown doctor saves Elijah Carter's life during labor. The headline went viral, the image of Grace, soaked in rain and blood, cradling his head until the ambulance came. The hospital phones wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists camped outside. Donations poured in. Everyone wanted to meet the pregnant doctor hero. But Grace didn't feel like a hero. She felt exposed, vulnerable. The closer Elijah came to waking up, the more her secret burned inside her. When Elijah finally opened his eyes, the world felt new, blurry, slow. But one face stood out, the same one he thought he dreamed about. Grace. She stood at his bedside, chart in hand, trying to stay professional. "You're in St. James Hospital. You've been unconscious for 2 days," she said calmly. His throat was dry. "You were there. The accident." Grace nodded, eyes averted. "You were lucky. Someone must have been looking out for you." Elijah's gaze lingered on her. Something about her voice tugged at the corners of his memory. "Have we met before?" Her heart skipped. "I don't think so." A lie, the kind that tasted like guilt. He smiled faintly, still weak. "Then, I guess I owe a stranger my life." Grace forced a small smile. "You don't owe me anything. Just get better. She turned to leave, but his voice followed her. Grace Monroe, right? She froze. How do you know my name? He nodded toward his chart. It's written on the report, but it suits you. Grace. Feels. Fitting. She managed a polite laugh before escaping down the hall, unaware that the very man she was avoiding had already begun searching for her story. Days later, Elijah's recovery became a media sensation. The Carter Foundation announced a Monroe Medical Fund. Millions dedicated to supporting underprivileged doctors, inspired by Grace's bravery. It should have been a blessing. Instead, it became a storm. Whispers spread a pregnant woman saving a billionaire, then suddenly receiving a fund in her name. Rumors twisted admiration into accusation. Gold digger. Opportunist. Strategist. Grace stayed silent, even as the comments turned cruel. Her only focus was her unborn child and keeping Elijah from remembering the truth. But Elijah wasn't done. He visited her ward daily, bringing flowers for the staff, excuses to check on progress. He said it was gratitude, but in truth, he was drawn to her the way she spoke, her calm strength, her warmth that didn't bend under gossip. One evening, he found her on the hospital rooftop. You avoid me a lot, he said quietly. Grace didn't look at him. Because I have work. You also saved my life. Most people would use that to get close. You run. She sighed. Not everyone wants to be seen, Mr. Carter. He chuckled softly. Elijah, please. The silence stretched between them. She felt his gaze searching, familiar. He took a step closer. I feel like I've met you before, he said again. Grace's pulse quickened. Maybe in another life. He smiled. If that's true, I hope I didn't mess it up. Her voice trembled. You did. For a moment, he looked startled, like she'd just handed him a ghost from his past. But before he could speak, her pager beeped. I have to go, she murmured, turning away, leaving him with a question he didn't even know how to ask. That night, Grace sat in her car, head against the steering wheel. He doesn't remember. Thank God. But when she turned on the radio, the breaking news hit like thunder. Is greater than Elijah Carter announces the Grace Initiative, a multi-million-dollar program named after the woman who saved his life. Her hands went cold. The man she was hiding from had just made her name headline news. And across the city, Elijah watched the same report from his office, unaware that the woman glowing on his screen was carrying his child, and that fate was about to make sure their paths could no longer run parallel. Is greater than, what would you do if the love you buried was suddenly brought back to life right when you were least ready to face it? Because for Grace, hiding was no longer an option. The truth was coming for her. And it had Elijah's eyes. The day Elijah discovered the truth began like any other cameras flashing, executives smiling, and Grace's name printed across the stage banner. The Grace Initiative. Healing through compassion. She stood at the back of the room, clutching her speech notes, her heart hammering against her ribs. She hadn't wanted to attend, but Elijah insisted. He said, the world needed to see her. If only he knew how much of her he'd already seen and forgotten. Dr. Monroe, Elijah called softly, walking toward her before the press conference began. He looked better, confident, radiant, the kind of man built for headlines. You're not nervous, are you? Grace forced a smile. A little. It's not every day your life becomes a charity. He laughed lightly, touching her arm. You deserve it. You saved me. Let me return the favor. Her breath caught. You already have. But before he could ask what she meant, Marcus Carter, Elijah's younger brother, stepped in, his grin sharp as glass. Always touching moments with the hero doctor, Marcus said coolly. You've got quite the way of stealing the spotlight, Grace. She ignored the sting. I didn't ask for attention, Marcus. Maybe not, he sneered. But you sure didn't turn it down. Elijah frowned. Enough, Marcus. Marcus smiled thinly and walked away, but Grace noticed the flash of jealousy behind his charm. Something about it chilled her. A week later, the scandal hit. Tabloids exploded with headlines. Billionaire falls for his savior, But was it all a setup? Grace Monroe's medical license scandal resurfaces. Anonymous sources leaked old disciplinary reports, twisting the truth into poison. Grace sat in her apartment, watching the TV light flicker across her tear-streaked face. She didn't need to ask who was behind it. Marcus had found her weakness and used it. That night, she went to Elijah's estate, ready to explain. But the guards wouldn't let her in. Elijah's asked for privacy, one said. She waited outside in the rain, trembling. Hours passed before Elijah appeared. He looked hurt, tired, confused. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. Grace's throat tightened. "Tell you what? That you lost your license, that you were under investigation, that the woman I've been defending is being painted as a fraud." Her heart broke. "I wanted to, but I was trying to protect you, and the baby." He froze. "What baby?" The air went still. Rain pattered between them. Grace realized too late what she'd said. "Elijah, please, I didn't mean to." His voice was barely a whisper. "You're pregnant?" She nodded, tears streaming. "Yes. But it's not what you think. It's yours, Elijah." From that night, his face drained of color. "That night at the gala," she nodded again. "I didn't plan it. I wasn't trying to trap you." Elijah stepped back, disbelief clouding his expression. The truth that should have united them now tore them apart. "I need time," he said quietly. She wanted to reach for him, but he was already walking away. For days, Elijah disappeared. Grace faced the media storm alone, whispers, headlines, judgment. Then came the fire. Marcus, cornered by financial scandals and desperate to destroy the proof Grace had uncovered, set fire to Elijah's estate. He hadn't known Grace would be there retrieving medical documents she'd left behind. When Elijah arrived, smoke billowed through the night sky. "Grace!" he shouted, racing into the flames. She was trapped in the study, coughing, cradling her stomach as debris fell around her. "Elijah?" He found her under the collapsing beam, pulled her close, and shielded her with his own body. When firefighters dragged them out, both were unconscious but alive. Marcus was caught fleeing the scene, his face pale with regret. The next morning, Grace woke to Elijah sitting beside her hospital bed, his hand wrapped around hers. His eyes were red, but his voice was steady. "I could have lost both of you," he whispered. "And for what? Pride? Fear? None of it matters anymore." Grace's tears fell silently. "I didn't mean to lie to you, Elijah. I was just scared." He squeezed her hand. "I know. And I was too blind to see the truth staring right at me." They sat there, no cameras, no press, no grand speeches, just two hearts learning how to breathe again. Weeks later, the world learned the full story. Marcus confessed in court, clearing Grace's name. The Carter Foundation reinstated her license, and together, she and Elijah rebuilt both their lives and their mission. They renamed the fund the Grace Initiative, a network providing scholarships and medical aid to women doctors facing hardship. Years passed. Their love grew stronger with every scar it carried. 10 years later, a reporter interviewed Elijah at a new hospital wing dedication. Beside him stood Grace, radiant, with their 10-year-old daughter holding her hand. "Mr. Carter," the reporter asked, "what inspired this project?" Elijah smiled, glancing at his wife. "A woman who saved my life twice, once with her hands and once with her heart." Grace laughed softly, looking at their child. "We don't choose how life tests us," she said, "but we choose how we rise after falling." And as the cameras flashed, the three of them stood hand in hand, living proof that sometimes love isn't found in fairy tales. It's born from fire, forgiveness, and faith. Is greater than. Because grace doesn't just heal wounds, it rewrites destinies. Moral of the story. In the end, Grace and Elijah's story reminds us that truth may hurt, but it always heals. Love built on honesty can withstand any storm, and sometimes God allows pain only to lead us to purpose. If this story touched you, hit that subscribe button for more emotional tales from King's Folklore. And even if it didn't, come on, subscribe anyway, we'll win you over next time. Drop a comment, like the video, and let's keep the stories alive. Thanks for watching.